Going live, going live, and we're live. Hello, I'm
We're
Manoltus.
live.
Yes, we are live on the internet, live on the air, and today I am speaking to the author of On Wish Mountain, available on Taurus Necrus and other platforms. Would you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, right. So I'm Charlie Borchard. I think before in the pre-stream you referred me as Bouchard or something like that, and that's completely acceptable. That's completely fine. Um, but I think it might just be because I'm from like a working class British family that Borchard is like the bastardization of that surname that we like to use, I guess. So yeah, Charlie Borchard is my name. I have a audio drama released on in a podcast format and on Taurus Necrus. And yeah, I'm here just trying to get the word out about hopefully get more people to listen to it. So thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
Yes, and the links to that are in the description below for everyone that is interested. So, tell us a little bit about your work.
So let's see. So the series is called On Wish Mountain, and it's an audio drama. I'm also in the process of making it into a comic, and I'm also in the very long term, I'll be adapting it into like a novel format as well. But for now, at the moment, it's an audio drama series that features it's a comedy fantasy that follows characters who are cursed by a magical storm, and it's about their quest to go up a gigantic magical mountain in the hopes of undoing their curse. And yeah, so there's lots to say about it, but that's the gist. And it's readily free to listen to right now and to enjoy. But also, if you want to support not only me, but Taurus Necros and independent Christian authors and creators, then helping to give like $5 uh, can really help make more of this great stuff. Honestly, so
Yes,
yeah, that's hopefully that answers the question in that way.
yes,
I'm new to interviews, so bear with me.
that's all
I'm
right.
used to being on Nate's streams. He's very chatty and great.
Yeah, I had a
Uh,
bit of a listen to your work, and I have to say that I am impressed. There's
oh,
some
thank you.
quality voice work there, um, as well as the format in which it is presented. It has a bit of an almost screenplay like format to it. But
Yeah.
how is it with the voice actors? How did you go through with that?
Well, I have a background in film and television, a very simple background. Of I've made many short films. I've directed a lot of short films, and I've been doing that since I was about 16. I'm 25 now, and yeah, so I'm used to working with actors, and I'm used to in person casting, generally going through the casting process of putting out the casting call, getting the actors together, and I had a whole learning process when making this audio drama, just in terms of what is feasible realistically on a tight budget. It's all
Certainly.
self-funded. I've poured hundreds of pounds into this audio drama uh, already, and that cost is pretty consistent. The second episode's on its way. And I think generally when it comes to working with actors, I really enjoy it. And getting the casting right and the performances right for this was really important to me. I took it as seriously as I would take it if I was casting a feature film. I wasn't content just to get kind of okay voices. I made sure to get, especially for the lead hero character, Perez Dunta, I had to make sure that his voice and his voice actor were really they just really fit the part in a great way, and I think I got that. I think especially in the first episode, it's the cast more than anything that shines. You know.
Yes. So speaking about the cost and how that goes into the production here, did you have a sort of a mental image or thought about how the characters should sound, and was that influenced by the voice actors that you encountered? Did their performance influence how your writing decided to develop?
So once the script was written,
Yes.
because I've got a background in film and TV. Once I wrote the screenplay, I was like, right, I firmly believe in once you've got something written down on paper and it's good enough, it's of a good enough standard to be shown to other people. I believe that you should put that right into work as much as you can.
Yes.
Every medium you can, just don't waste it, because for me, I don't know about you, but I went so many years trying to get projects written and done and failing. And so now that I've reached a point with my own creative process that I can get my writing finished to a reasonable degree, I'm like aggressively chasing getting these projects made and done. Because after a certain point, they have like a life of their own, and they're not so hard to get off the ground.
Certainly.
And what was I went off a little bit off. What was your question again? Sorry.
I think a better way to phrase what I was asking is, did the voice talent have an influence on your writing later on?
Right. So yeah, that was it. 100%. Right. So there's a big one. Is the series takes place in like a false 1700s, 1800s European world. It's almost anime-like in the sense of like it's European, but it's got none of like the trappings of, like, for instance, it's European, but there's no like Christian symbols. You know, like as a Christian, I don't want to put Christian symbols into a world that is inherently false, even if it's a fictional world. I don't want to have that correlation. But this affects the actors in the sense and the cast, because Jerez Dunta is inspired. The main character, he's inspired by characters like Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. And and because I really like that character, I find that Gaston as a character fascinating, in the way he was portrayed in Beauty and the Beast, and just how like masculinity was depicted. But Gaston is an American, and he has a very booming American voice, even though it's set in a Disney French European setting in the cartoon. So it's this weird kind of mixture that Disney
I understand.
And so when I was making the first episode, I had that in my mind of like, well, I could have an mixed American English cast and not worry so much about getting the distinctly European voices in. But funnily enough, on the day of recording, it was me, the sound guy, and the guy playing Jerez Dunta, played by Joseph Blunt, brilliant guy.
Yes.
And we basically, literally, right before we started recording, we was like, okay, I was thinking American accent, but could be British. And then basically Joseph and the sound guy were just like, no. There's no way it's going to be American. Make it British. And I was like, fuck it. All right.
All right.
Like, it sounds flippant, but from that affected everything, because everyone else just naturally fit into that English sounding, that voice that's so, like, I don't know, in the whole thing it's so British in a sense. And it's kind of funny now looking back that I even thought that some characters would speak in an American accent. Yeah.
So it sort of solidified the character of the world that you're building in a way.
Yeah. Well, another a lot of the inspirations for it, ironically, were American. So the the biggest inspiration other than Beauty and the Beast, stylistically, is The Princess Bride,
All
and
right.
I really like that movie for the most part. I more so like the first 45 minutes. The other half of the movie I could give or take, but there's something about the whimsy, the way that the European world is depicted through like an American, from a like a Jewish filmmaker. So they've got their own agendas, whether they know it or not, when they're making these kind of things. Of, I don't know, it's not made from a Christian point of view, if that makes sense, of that European
Yes.
world, and it's made for Hollywood. So there's
So
several
it's a
layers
little
of
bit
grace.
anachronized,
Yeah.
and sort of based on more a romanticized vision of that time period.
Romantic is exactly like romanticized is exactly it. Like I had from watching, I don't know how much you're an anime guy. I like anime a fair bit.
Yes, I
Uh,
have some reviews on that.
oh, nice. Also, I should check them out. And one anime that I really love is One Piece. I think it's
Okay.
great.
Yeah.
And there's it's in One Piece where they, and so it's about pirates and adventure and that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
And it's sort of
And
a long form epic.
yeah, it's fantastic. And it's funny as well. And one thing that there's a phrase that was used in it called like, it was a man's romance in that context,
Yes.
like it was, and so I was like, a man's romance, you know, and so it's not romantic in the term of like men and women, but the romance a man has to the idea of logos and adventure and being a part of something greater and going on a great journey. Like that was what I wanted to capture in my audio drama, for Wish Mountain. It is that sense of you're going to start at the very beginning and you're going to go all the way up this gigantic magical mountain with these characters every step of the way. There's no skipping.
Yeah.
You're really going to just go on this huge journey. And the Princess Bride as well was like, I mean, it's a very romantic film for the most part as well. Um, but I guess in that anime way, the creator of One Piece, he was saying he was saying he created One Piece for 14-year-old boys.
Yes.
And one thing that he decided to do with that was no romance between characters, between the main cast.
Yeah.
And by doing that, by saying, okay, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter, everything else is allowed, but the main cast of characters, all these pirates that live together, they're not going to fall in love. And that stuck with me because I was like, okay, cool, because once you bring love into the mix, then things can kind of spiral in a sense. The
Yes.
story takes on like these like subplots to a certain degree, and it get kind of, you don't want your characters to settle down and give up because they're so happy that they've found romance. You want them to be in a place of contained adolescence, so they be these kind of fun, exuberant characters for as long as you need them to be.
Yes. And
Uh,
an idealized, romanticized form.
yeah. So that the romanticized part of Wish Mountain is that kind of bottled up adolescence, that even though these characters are like nearing 30 years of age, they're inherently childish in a certain sense. They're in a state of arrested development, and a lot of who they are, like the whole thing is about, everyone has a curse, and instead of it being like just internal, this magical storm, when you're cursed by it, it makes your inner turmoil, whatever it is, whatever your hiccup is, whatever it is, that your vice, your addiction, your overcompensation, or your whatever psychological trauma that you have from early childhood, that say, or from whenever, it makes manifest. And I for me personally, having that kind of these characters in a state of arrested development, and then having them have their inner turmoil made manifest in combination on this grand adventure just seems like just a great recipe for fun, you know?
Yes, it certainly does sound like an enjoyable concept for a story, but also a bit of a high concept in having them essentially be confronted not only by their internal fears, but by the sort of physical manifestation of that.
Like it's like the opposite of superpowers, where a superpower for a hero tends to double down what the creators. I don't think it's the case, but it kind of doubles down on the flaws of the character to the point where they can get away with having those flaws, you know.
Yes.
Whereas, what would be an example of that? I don't know, like Superman. I think is an incredibly flawed character inherently, but to compensate for that, they make him the most powerful man in the universe. You know, and so you're so awed by the fact that he's so powerful, that the fact that he is so full of contradictions and so much of a boy scout in a certain way can sort of like get swept under the rug and you can just ignore it. Whereas I like the idea of you always keep your characters as human as possible, even if they get some kind of strange curse. You know, I don't like bulletproof characters. It's not my idea of good storytelling. But I like a superhero movie every now and again as well.
Yes. So when you're writing, do you have a writing that is focused more on the story and the events that are going to happen, or one that is focused more on the themes of what is happening?
It's a mixture, but primarily what I'm focused on is giving the reader and me as because I'm the first reader, I'm the most important reader to me at all times. And then if anyone else likes it, great. But it's for me primarily. For what it is I'm working through my own issues as just a human being, and I make whatever my issue is that I'm going through right now into fiction. And Wish Mountain is all about Jerez Dunter and his journey of becoming. It's a coming of age story, and so what I was even though Jerez Dunter is incredibly different from me, he's like 6'7", handsome, heroic, but a bit of a coward. Like he's got so many qualities I don't have, but despite that, the themes of the story about not toxic masculinity, but about masculinity questioned and the relationship it has both positive and negative. You know, the whole idea of a toxic masculinity obscures the fact that we should talk about masculinity, but also praise it as much as we damn it, you know? Give it a fair shake.
So there's a difference between a strong masculinity that is pure and a strong masculinity that is corrupted.
Exactly. I also find masculinity as a theme inherently funny. You know,
okay.
So for Jerez Dunter, he's all about wanting to be the hero, but when you're I do believe that some people are they come out of the womb cowardly, you know, whether they want to or not, and it's something that they can heroically try to overcome in themselves. But some people are just born as alpha males, and some people are born as deltas or bravos or gammas to a certain degree. And I wanted to explore the overcompensation of masculinity, which is not so apparent in the first episode, but the second episode of Wish Mountain that's going to come out within the next few months is going to primarily focus on that in a really funny way, I think.
Okay. Speaking about the episodes, do you have a definite plan? You don't have to tell me the details, but a definite plan on how far you're going? Do you have an end in mind for the story?
I have a short-term goal, and then there's a long-term goal. The short term is everything that is the current series
Yes.
is called the Before Saga. So the first episode is called Before Wish Mountain. The second episode is called Almost on Wish Mountain. I could keep naming them, but it might be derivative. So there's going to be 5 to 6 episodes of this Before Saga, where I'm essentially building up the world, building up the roster of characters that number to about 7 main characters who are each distinct and interesting enough that they could have their own spin-off series. And I've done all that work to really ground these characters and make them interesting. And the whole goal of that is to take these characters, bring them together, and put them on one spot, particularly on Wish Mountain together, where they're going to be for a very long time. And so once they're at that spot that I want to get them at, then the Before Saga's done, which you could have as a whole book and enjoy as its own self-contained story, its own thing. Then the whole origin of the audio drama came from the idea I had of this really simple situational comedy where halfway up a mountain, Wish Mountain,
Yes.
there's a pub.
There's a pub.
And yeah, right. And the whole concept is that there's these people that run this pub, and all these people from all across the land, they're trying to get to the top of Wish Mountain, but it's impossible. No one can do it. No one has ever done it, but everyone tries to do it, because if you can do it, you get a magical wish of your heart's desire. So it's the ultimate goal, but who can reach that ultimate goal? And so most people, before they can get to the top, they have to make a pit stop at the middle of the mountain. And so it's just, from a writer's point of view, it's having your cake and eating it, because I could literally have kings and queens, villains, heroes, monsters. I could have all the great characters of an entire fictional setting come up to this one spot on this mountain to meet this one set of roster of situational comedy characters.
Okay.
And what ended up and so like that's what I'm working towards. But the irony is that from that simple enough premise, I inadvertently ended up writing an epic comedy where the characters got so much more in depth and so much more interesting and insightful and full of range and gravitas, and the tone of it was way more mature than I intended. I was going for a sitcom, but I ended up writing an actual book, in audio drama format.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy with that. I think that's fantastic, because I didn't know I could do that. And the whole thing's been a massive learning process for me about learning new milestones of storytelling of, okay, so I've written to completion, fully drafted, fully done, 4 episodes of the Before Saga. And spending that much time with these characters in this world is a very intense, fulfilling experience personally to see. I mean, I don't know about you. Do you write fiction?
I'm working on that a little bit, but mostly I write philosophy.
No, I've noticed that. Yeah. I should give your stuff a read. But yeah, just in general, for fiction, for me, the joy of it is self-exploration, because essentially you have to, whatever you write down on the page, whatever your characters do, whether you're aware of it or not, you're essentially putting your psychological profile in action for everyone to see, and yourself. It's
Yes.
like a giant Rorschach test. And you have to sort of see, okay, why did I make that character do this? Why did I make that character do that? And for me, I usually go, "All right, that stems back to something I did in childhood or some psychological hiccup I've got." Um, I don't know. That's just what I love about it. But I can understand a lot of people find that really uncomfortable, that process, which I imagine is why a lot of people are put off by writing fiction, because you have to go to some really dark places sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Now, I have another question. It says it's intended for ages 16 plus.
Yeah.
What would be the distinction there?
Okay. So I've got a big thing as a Christian and as just as a general human being, that I think the less we subject children and young adolescents to violent, strange, weird imagery, the better. And as a general rule, I also try and keep children out of my fiction unless it's really small or just like trivial. Because I've generally found that I don't want to do what like what's his name, Stephen King.
Yeah.
You know, he's kind of infamous for writing stories where kids are in peril in the most disgusting ways. And you know, as an atheist, that didn't bother me. As a Christian, it really bothers me. You know, it's not okay. Uh, I think that you should have some morality when you write. If you're going to write about hard subjects, fair enough, but you just
Yes.
need to treat it with the weight it deserves. You can't be flippant
So
about
what
it.
is it exactly about your work that puts it in the 16 and over category?
Well, you listened to the first episode, right? So
Yeah.
there's loads of boob jokes,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
loads,
They're
and
this
abundance.
big.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, I love the boob jokes, but I I started the series as an atheist, and then I ended it like the first episode. I wrote the first episode as an atheist, and then I started the second episode as a Christian. So there's a divide there where I wouldn't write the same first episode again because I'm not the same person anymore.
Yes.
But I also believed, and I do believe at the time, that all the boob jokes and all the crassness and the excessive violence that's in the first episode, I like it. I think it's great, but I think you should be 16 or older to uh, to engage with that.
Yes.
You don't have to be technically, because kids are going to find a way to watch adult material whether you want them to or not. But that's, at least I put the recommendation there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because for the rest of the series, it's very tame in a different way. Like there's still violent things happen, but there's a lot more logos, and just it's inadvertently more wholesome, and I'm glad for that because it really fits the themes of the world
Okay.
and the character.
You've mentioned the term a couple of times. Could you explain to our audience what you mean when you say logos?
So I got it originally, and it's thanks to the term logos or logos or whatever you want to say it. Thanks to E. Michael Jones and his work of championing logos. So logos is Christ. Jesus Christ is the logos,
Yes.
and the logos is truth. It's truth. It's goodness. It's logic. It's rationality. It's reason. It's the word. All those things that are good and are not of evil and of that lead man to be the best part of himself, in accordance to Christ, is my view at least.
Okay.
You know.
So do you approach things from a particular theological perspective?
Yes, I'm like I'm fully in the Christian game now. Like there's no getting it out for me. Like
Okay.
I view everything from a Christian metric. I'm not a, what would you call it, a theologist. I'm not smart enough for that. I'm not intense enough for that. I'm not a Bible lawyer. I'm not that kind of thing. I just simply accept the truth that Christ is the Lord and Savior, and from that, and He's the Logos. From that metric, every decision I make in my life is affected by that, and it goes as far down into my writing, and a lot of my fiction. For instance, I wrote an entire script. There's like 90 pages of this big science fantasy story, and I got to the redrafting phase of it recently, and I realized I'm gonna have to abandon the whole thing. Even though I love it,
Yeah.
there's not logos in it. You know, there's not an it. I wouldn't give it to someone and expect them to have a more fulfilling life experience after having engaged with that work, because I believe that the best fiction, the best works are supposed to be life affirming, and that they should improve your life, or at least make it easier or more cathartic in a sense. Um, and so that's when I write something, it's a process for me of bettering myself. If I'm not doing that, I'm not interested. I don't engage with what I'm doing, um, and I feel incredibly fortunate that the ideas for stories that I get post becoming a Christian are far better and far more interesting than the ideas I used to get. Um, I could tell so many stories about vampires, and which are in Wish Mountain in a
Yes.
different kind of context, not the typical vampires. But I could tell stories of just the most insane Lovecraftian horrors imaginable. I can do that without even having to think about it. Really, it'd be too easy in a sense, because being evil in your fiction is effortless, because it takes no grace, it takes no logos, you know.
Yeah.
Because if you try and craft a world that inherently doesn't have a god in it, then anything is permitted. And but the irony comes in with, this is why Stephen King's work for the most part is really good until you get to the end, because he doesn't write good endings, because he writes a world that is inherently godless, or I should say, it doesn't have a Christian god in it. And if your world doesn't have the Christian god in it, then there is no happy ending. There's no there's no happy ending to be had. Uh, and so I have to, by virtue of acknowledging that, I have to stay away from loads of ideas that I have, because I wouldn't be able to give you a fulfilling ending and ending narrative. Because I think if you can't write a good ending, don't write the rest of it. There's no point. Um,
Okay.
you're wasting everyone's time.
Yeah. And
I
by
hate
a
that.
good ending, do you mean specifically an ending that would be classically comedic, or are there also good tragedy endings as well to stories?
That's an interesting question. I think I think I write comedies in the idea of happy endings for the most part, because
Yes.
that's just my mentality. But for instance, I was talking to Nate, and he was talking about writing a world in which God doesn't exist, right? And it's kind of like having your cake and eating it, in that concept, where if you acknowledge that there is a Christian God, but then you then say, but now I'm going to write a world where he is absent from this world, then you could tell, in a sense, a tragedy, but ultimately, in a meta sense, it's a comedy even, because you're still acknowledging there is a Christian God.
Okay.
It gets kind of
Yeah. So
complicated and timey-wimey and all
it's
that, but
a sort of fascinating perspective.
I
So
think the
yeah.
thing I want to say though is, when I write a story, I want to pay off the characters, because they have dreams, they have goals, they have things that they want to do, but I always tie it directly into the themes of the story so that they go hand in hand. Um, but I think what fiction tends to be, the best kind of fiction, is almost like an essay where you're just demonstrating your points with evidence, and then the resolution is saying, look, here's the evidence, the characters, the world, the actions, the consequences of everything that's unfolded, and then the resolution is saying, and this is how everything works out in the end. And as a Christian, you say, well, if you act with kindness, logos, love, you will have a happy ending. Even if you die, for instance, um, there's the the play, The Hunchback of Notre Dame,
Yeah.
and that's had one of the most insightful endings I've ever seen to a play, where Quasimodo, he dies, and Esmeralda, she dies, and and so the entire play, Quasimodo's been painted, the actor's been painted as the deformed monster Quasimodo, the man monster, but he dies, which is tragic and sad and should be a tragedy. But in the last moments of the play, he goes to heaven and he takes off his monstrous form, and you can see the man beneath that he's always been, his immortal soul,
Yeah.
and he goes off into heaven. And so it becomes it in that moment it changes from a tragedy into the best kind of life affirming ending. um and I don't know, that's just all the shit I think about every time I'm writing, just in various layers, you know.
Yeah. It's all
So yeah.
all thanks to the grace of God.
Yeah, are you a what do you believe?
I am a Christian.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Cool. What do you think about logos?
Well, there's a number of different ways that various theologians talk about it, because I personally am a bit of a theologian myself. So
Nice.
the logos, as would be the uh, Erasmian pronunciation, I think that the word of God, as in God the Father being the speaker, the Son being the Word, not in a
Right.
sense
That's
of,
interesting.
well, because the Spirit is the breath, not in the sense of an Arian understanding of Jesus being produced by the Father in a sense of time, but rather in an understanding of Jesus being the perfect Son in obedience to the Father as the Son, but also co eternal and having the same will as the Father.
Hmm.
In that sense, Jesus then becomes flesh and physically transmits the information that is given in the New Testament, in the Gospels, from what Jesus said, to ultimately accomplish the work that leads to salvation in his death, but also in his resurrection.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
And
I
it, yeah,
one thing that I've realized when I was kind of looking at a lot of storytellers, and especially the ones that I used to really love but have since disappointed me in terms of their career paths, where they start out great and then, like with the first movie or the first book or whatever, and then they lose whatever that rebellious insightful thing was in the beginning that they had, and they just kind of become, for a lack of a better way of saying it, hacks of themselves, like the parodies of themselves to a degree. Um, and what I kind of ended up stumbling upon was all these great narratives that I love. they're all second or derivative in a great way to the ultimate story of the New Testament and Christ. You know, are you going to find a better protagonist and a better hero, savior character than Christ? You know?
Yeah.
Like, so every character in fiction that tries to embody a heroic role, I would think, whether or not, who knows, embodies aspects of Christ. And but you have to sort of acknowledge the fact that they are derivative, and they're of part of like a branch that lead, like a part of a road that led upwards would lead to Christ eventually.
Yeah. Well,
As
you
the
you could
apex.
say that ultimately everything is derivative because the plan for the sacrifice was one that was made before the foundation of the world, out from eternity. And of course, humans are made in the image of God, and in that sense, our whole existence is derivative.
I mean, yeah, I agree. I think I agree with that. There's so much to unpack with that, but is that what you think?
Well, it's just a thought I just had just now, but in that sense,
Because when you say you're an expression of God's life, like the world is an extension of God's character,
well, I
manifest
wouldn't
in a
say
different
that
way.
specifically because I think that there's a distinction between the creation and the creator. So, and I think that's very
I agree,
important to uphold.
but okay, this is getting to levels of theology where I'm content not knowing. You know, the barrier between, let's say, my soul versus God's. Like, okay, I just acknowledge the fact that God's far greater. You know, as
Yeah.
long as I think as long as I accept that, it's all good. Like, be humble, kind of thing. Um, I don't know. I think that I feel almost to the point where if I go too theologian with it, for me, I'm too short for that ride. You know,
Yeah.
whereas because my IQ is not that high. Just being honest.
Well, don't sell yourself
Um,
short.
what's that? Sorry.
I said don't sell yourself short. You know,
Great.
all things are
Is that a
possible.
pun?
Well, no, it's an expression. I don't know. Maybe it's an American expression, but it's based on the practice of short selling on the stock market. It's saying
Right.
don't don't denigrate yourself. Don't put yourself down to, farther than you need to.
Right.
Yeah.
I maybe I've got some kind of like residual trauma from Nathaniel, who's Mr. High IQ, Um, just playing. Yeah. So I mean, I've had this weird idea of why human beings love books so much, where it's on my channel. Whether I believe it or not, maybe it's a bit tongue in cheek, the whole concept of it, but you know, if we embody the logos in the sense of we admire it and we love the word and we love truth and we love the written word as a as a continuation of the word. We love books because we can see so much of ourselves in the fiction. You know,
Yeah.
it's like that moment when you're reading a book and you're engaging with it. I think that the thing that leads us to want to participate in fiction and to participate in reading in general is it is obviously God given, and that is why we love it so much. At least I do.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm going around in plot holes here, but yeah, go on. You ask questions. I'm going down in rabbit
Okay.
holes. I'm
Okay.
spiraling.
So, speaking of other written works, are there some other projects that you're working on?
Yes. So let's see. I really like working with Nathaniel on with Taurus Necros. It's a
Yes.
fantastic site. It's a fantastic business, and if I was an investor, I'd be like buy into that company because it's gonna be big, 100%. It just takes time, and so I worked with Nate with before Wish Mountain, bringing that on, um, and when with talking with Nate, we initially was gonna release an encyclopedia for the bear community of like something along the lines of like gravy of all the mind blowing conspiracy ideas and facts and that kind of thing, all brought together in one volume.
Yeah. Could you
Um,
just, for a brief moment, for my audience that might not know, explain the bear community?
so the bear community was started by Owen Benjamin, and it's who's a comedian who got exiled from Hollywood because he was against children being given transgender changes and hormones at an early age because he's against child abuse because any human being would be. And because he was exiled, the people in Hollywood who thought they were winning by kicking him out of the comedy community. They ended up creating essentially the greatest hero. Anyone who's against the established narrative created by the media, they created their own worst enemy in Owen Benjamin, a comedian who spends hours every other day red pilling, sharing great insights, being hilarious, being funny, creating such a strong online Christian community. Um, and those people would call themselves the Bears. And um, so the Bear community is great. And say Nathaniel started the Taurus Necros for Christians, and it's adjacent, not like official or anything, but more often than not, it's people from the bear community have formed like a really solid group, Nate, to create Taurus Necros, and have the foundation for that. And from that, because like say Vox Day, who works with Nate a lot, not Nate, with Owen Benjamin a lot, has his own publishing company, Castelia
Yeah.
Library or something like that, and that's fantastic. But it's not open to very indie beginning creators. It's more about being established and a certain level of professionalism that when you're starting out you just can't naturally reach. So the need is there basically. Um, and so I was talking with Nate, and I was like, okay, let's do like some kind of encyclopedia for the bear community. It'll be quick, it'll be easy, it'll be something fun for the community, and it'll be a great little book to have. But during the process of talking about that book, I was like, oh, the book should have a mascot of some kind to make it more unique to the book, because you don't want to just do something, you don't want to just compile information because anyone could do that. There's nothing
Yeah.
of yourself in it. So I was like, okay, right, what would be unique to the bear community in a really fun way? And I thought like gravy. Then I thought like, oh, it'd be good like a little biscuit, because in the bear community, when you talk about conspiracies and you talk about like really interesting things, you say, oh, that's gravy. Put some gravy on my biscuits. My biscuits are dry, you know. You like ladle me that gravy,
Okay.
and so it's a if someone says, "Man, that is some great gravy," then you're basically saying, "Wow, that is some really great information that is blowing my mind right now." And so I created a character on the spot. Then I was like, "Little Biscuit," and then as soon as like Little Biscuit was in my head, I was like, "Holy shit! I've got like the best idea for a kids book ever."
Okay.
For the bear community, like this really wholesome Christian children's book series. And if you listen to Before Wish Mountain, it's a horror story. It's
Yeah.
more than anything else. The first episode changes as it goes along, but the first episode is primarily horror. Um, and so it would seem to me absurd that I would write a children's book, but I did because it's so much logos in it and so much beauty in it. And yeah, did you have that image of Little Biscuit that I sent you?
Yes, yes.
Just so people could see what I'm talking about.
All right, let me see if I can get it up for everyone to see. Okay, if I do this, I should go out from full screen and then we'll go here and zoom in a bit. Okay, just there you go. Everyone's seeing it now.
Okay, sweet. So yeah, the art is done by Hand Drawn Bear, who's part of the bear community, like a obscenely talented artist, ridiculously good artist, and so I'm just can't believe she's working on this project. And so I when I came up with this idea for Little Biscuit, a little so the first book will be called Little Biscuit and the Big Cheese in the Sky, and it's essentially a kid's book about a little biscuit. He goes to school, and he starts learning about the big cheese in the sky, and he has some questions, and he doesn't really understand what the big cheese in the sky is. He doesn't really understand how we went to the big cheese in the sky, and he finds that the more he asks questions about it, the more people get really angry with him, and they don't like it. And so it's more about is primarily about innocence and naivety towards asking questions, and how difficult it can be, especially for children, when they have such big questions and all they get in response is, "How dare you?" You know, how dare you ask questions? I am offended. We went to the moon.
Yeah, I think it's important that even if you disagree with the premise that someone is asking questions from, that if you think that that person's asking an honest question, I think it's important to give an honest answer.
Yeah, I mean, and so there, I've heard responses, a response, I think, where someone said, "Why are you setting?" Because the whole bear community is about you homestead, you take your kids out of school, you homeschool them, you do it right. You know,
Yeah.
you give them as good as an education. You just give them a life that's more akin to something you'd get in, you know, Little House on the Prairie, something wholesome and something, you know, away from the grabbledness of school and the indoctrination that goes on there. And my whole thing was, okay, I went to school, I know what it's like to live in that hell of asking questions and no one gives you any answers that mean anything. They'll give you evolution, they'll give you science isms, and, you know, history on the Holocaust and nothing else. You know, you completely is all about memorization, not about thinking for yourself. And for me personally, they never was able to crush the questioning part of me that was like, this is bullshit, I don't get it. Like, I'm not even angry, I'm just confused. And Little Biscuit is all about, look, I'm not angry, I'm just confused, I'm asking a question, like, give me an answer, please.
Yeah.
Because every answer you're giving me is more of like a call to authority. And yeah, so Little Biscuit, it's gonna be great. It's coming out in a few months. You know, people are busy, they're working full-time jobs trying to get these projects made, but when it's ready, it'll be ready. And I think the bear community and just people in general are going to really love it. Wish Mountain is a passion project. It's something that I understand is more of like a 20-year plan of slowly gaining an audience as I keep chipping episodes away every couple of months. But Little Biscuit, I feel, has the potential to be really big and really great for families who want to have a children's book that's Christian, not blasphemous, and is extremely cute.
All right. So on that note, I think we should start wrapping up.
Awesome.
Is there any place for people to contact you?
If you want to contact me, you could contact me at Borchard, Borchard, Charles. This is all one word. Charles, Charles, at gmail.com.
Okay.
Best way. And
Yeah.
I'll get your email right away.
Yeah. Is there any final statement you have to make? Any last thing to say before we stop?
Um, I would say that thank you for having me on your show. First of all, I really appreciate it. It's been a really great conversation.
Yeah,
Had a
my
great
pleasure.
time. Yeah, this has been great. I would love to go more into theology some other time and really get down
Yeah,
to
I'd be happy
all
to
that other
talk to you
stuff.
about it. Yeah.
Sweet. You can teach me because that's how open I am to that sort of thing. And yeah, just in general, good things are on the horizon as always. And yeah, all good things are coming. So it's all good.
All right. So anyway, thank you everybody for watching, and give a quick check out on his work. You can find some links in the description below, and enjoy yourselves. Make sure that you take care of yourselves, everyone out there. And thank you all for watching, and I will be seeing you all next time on Awiltus over and out.